Hey guys, just a quick note before we jump into this recording of Office Hours. Office Hours are brought to you by Ride IQ. Every week, Ride IQ members are invited to join us for a conversation with a Ride IQ coach or guest expert about an important equestrian topic. That's Office Hours, and getting weekly direct access to equestrian professionals at the top of their field through Office Hours is a perk of the Ride IQ membership, but at its core, Ride IQ is a mobile app with hundreds of on-demand, listen while you ride audio lessons top by top eventing, jumper, and dressage coaches. In other words, with Ride IQ, you can take a lesson from an incredible coach during any ride you'd like. Whether you're looking to add structure to your rides or try new exercises or build confidence, Ride IQ can help. Membership is only $29.99 per month, and every membership automatically includes a 2-week unlimited access free trial. Try it for yourself today by downloading the Ride IQ mobile app on iPhone or Android. Welcome to Ride IQ. This recording of Office Hours is episode 54 from Tuesday, August 30th. The topic this week was the World Championships of Eventing with Peter Gray. The World Championships of Eventing began in mid-September, and earlier this year, Peter was given the honor of being appointed as a member of the ground jury for the event. During this episode, Peter tells us about the event, its significance, the role of the ground jury, and he goes through the dressage test box by box and describes what he's looking for as a judge. We hope you enjoy this week's Office Hours. Hey everyone! Welcome to Office Hours. I'm already excited because today we're joined by Peter Gray, and Kinsey says I'm not allowed to say who my favorite people are, but Peter is one of my favorite people, so I'm putting it out there. Kinsey, you can edit it out if you want to later. But for anyone who's here live, you heard it here first. You know Peter because he is a Ride IQ coach, and we hear every day how helpful the dressage test playbooks are on the app. And that's all thanks to Peter. When we talked to him about doing the playbooks, we pitched maybe doing a few of the tests. And Peter was like, no, I'm going to do all the tests so that I can help everyone. And it's been so appreciated. And I know it helps a lot of people. So I'll do a quick intro to Peter. Peter has ridden at the Olympics as an event rider. He's coached at the Olympics for the Canadian eventing team. He is a renowned dressage judge in the eventing world. He is one of the best dressage judges in the world. I mean, he was a judge at Landover this past year, and he was appointed to the ground jury at the World Championships of Eventing this year, which is what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to get into kind of all the aspects of it, including, all the aspects. I don't need to hit them right now. He's a level 4 ICP certified instructor, top dressage rider. Peter, we're such huge fans of you for all of those amazing reasons, but also just because you, from the very beginning, like since before Ride IQ existed, you've been a supporter. You've been willing to help us and go out of your way to give Ride IQ support, give me and Kinsey support. And that's the sort of thing that we will never forget. So thank you for being you, and thank you for being here tonight.
Well, thank you for having me. And I just have to give a shout out to both of you and Kyle for coming out with this coaching app. It's just really fantastic. I also get a lot of comments about how much people get out of it. I did have one funny comment, however. Some woman came up to me and said, I really enjoy going through all the test reviews. I go through them at night when I go to bed instead of reading a book. And she said, I found a solution to my husband's insomnia. As soon as he hears your voice, he falls right to sleep. So I'm not sure that was a compliment, but it was kind of funny.
It's so funny you say that, because before Ride IQ was out to the public, we had like a beta version, and our dad called us one day and was like, it's like, it replaces my meditation app. It puts me right to sleep. He said the same thing. And we're like, oh, I love that. But we kind of had the same reaction. We're like, we're glad it's soothing, but we're not trying to put anyone to sleep with this stuff. But maybe when she's listening to that, as she goes to bed, maybe it's really ingraining your ideas into her head.
Yeah. Well, that's the time I go through all my tests, is when I'm laying in bed, and I never get past the trot work because I fall asleep as well. So.
Well, you'll have really strong trot work then. All right. So I am going to hand it over to Kinsey to kind of kick off tonight's questions. And for anyone who's here with us live, feel free to say hello in the chat. Feel free to put questions for Peter in the chat, and Kinsey and I will relay those. And with that, over to you, Kins.
Perfect. Well, yeah, I mean, I ditto everything Jessa just said, Peter. You're just such a joy to be around, and we are so grateful to have you on our coaching team. So to get us started for tonight, let's go back to, it was just last weekend you were at Great Meadow. Can you tell us a little bit about how that went and how you think the U.S. riders performed there and how that might kind of bleed into their performances at the championships?
Yeah, great question. First of all, riders actually got a really good sneak preview of the judging at Pratoni, because at Bromont, the week before Great Meadows, I was judging with Christian Steiner, who's from Austria, who is our third member of the ground jury at Pratoni. And then this last weekend at Great Meadows, I was judging with Kiki Klingspor, who is the president of the ground jury. So in the last 2 weekends, riders would have had a chance to ride under the entire ground jury, which is, I think, very helpful if they pay attention to the comments and try and figure out what those judges are looking for. There is a new rule out this year that all 3 judges cannot appear together, because they thought that was influencing some competitions to get more entries if they offered the entire World Championship panel. So we're only allowed to appear two of the 3 of us, but in the last 2 weekends I worked with both. And from a personal point of view, it was really great to get to know those co-judges. I've worked with Kiki before, but to know how people react in competitions, because we're under pressure as well. And it just means that when we go to Pratoni, we're not getting acquainted. We already know each other well, and we've worked together as the team.
It's so exciting. So Pratoni's coming up very soon, in 2 weeks. And you were appointed as a member of the ground jury earlier this year. Have you been to Pratoni before in person?
Yes, I did have the chance to go this May to the test event, as we have in most World Championship years. There's a test event. I was the only one of the ground jury who attended there. I was the president of the ground jury. So it was really nice for me to judge a lot of the European riders, which we don't get a chance to do over here. And to see the site and get a little insight as to what's going to come in September. It's a hilly track. It's going to be long, and it's going to need a good galloping horse. The ground is interesting. It's hundreds and thousands of years old volcanic ash that is really the surface for most of the cross-country course. And I would describe it as maybe a hard-packed peat moss. So when it's dry, you can see a little bit of dust coming up from the ground, but it's beautiful footing. It's really quite lovely. So I think we're in for a treat.
Yeah, I mean, I am so excited just to watch the live stream. I can't imagine attending in person. So you were there for the test event. How does that work? The test event, is it a full competition and those people aren't the people who are going to be at championships, or what is the test event for?
The test event is to really to go through all the sort of the staff, so they all understand what they're doing, test the radios, test the horse ambulance, test the EM, the fire, the medical services, the footing, to see if the footing's good. They've got new footing in the show jumping arena, so we had a chance to see that. The dressage arena. The show jumping's actually on grass, which is another beautiful surface, and we often are jumping at home on grass, but don't compete on grass so much. So I think riders are going to enjoy that. Just the logistics, the transportation, the spectators, the parking. So it's a chance really for the organizing committee to have a test run. But in addition, as far as the competition went, it was a Nations Cup. So it was a team competition, which is exciting for me. I've got a lot of support behind any organizers that run team competitions in North America because we don't get a chance to ride on teams very often, which is why I think sometimes we've struggled in the past, our riders not really coming together as a cohesive team. It's very difficult to do because all year they're competing against each other. But in Europe, they have junior teams, young rider teams, regional teams, European teams, senior teams. Everything has been geared around team competition from the time there were kids, pony teams. But we don't get a chance to do that. And I think Roma 2 weeks ago was really a great opportunity. It was a young team that the US sent, Australia and Canada. Canada has had a green team as well, but it's the next generation that I saw there, and what a great chance for them to start understanding team camaraderie and how important it is to go into a major competition with some mental preparation and being cohesive team members. Just going back to Great Meadows, I have had a criticism because I've worn many hats over the years and observed how other countries behave, and they behave like high performance athletes of any other sport. And I'm not so sure that we are on the same tangent in North America. It's a little more geared around a business model and not a team performance. But I did notice at Great Meadows, unfortunately, we didn't see many Canadians. 3 of our 5 riders are based in Europe, which is fantastic for them to get that experience. But the members of the US squad that I saw there were really very, very professional. I was super impressed with not only their performances, which seemed to me like personal bests, all of them. So if they could just repeat those performances, I think the US team's going to be looking very, very good at Pratoni. But I've often felt that the Team USA has had a chance to really be high up in the standings, but hasn't quite achieved that. And I'm not so sure that the mental preparation of the team hasn't been the problem for that deficiency. So I did see a strong group, a friendly group working together, great performances. I would say all the riders look better than I have ever seen them in the last few years. So I think that it bodes well for Team USA.
Oh, that's great to hear. I'm so excited. No pressure to the team members. Just
No.
repeat your personal best performances. Before I get to my next question, somebody who's watching, Krista, said Peter was POTGJ, president of the ground jury in May. Very similar to POTUS, only 2 letters difference. I'm so happy to have another Ocala eventer superstar on the international stage. Woohoo. That's from
Thank you, Krista. Awesome.
And I'm going to re-ask you a question that I asked you before we went live here, which is when it comes to like prestigious 3-day events throughout the world and over the years, I'm guessing the Olympics are the most prestigious. Are the World Championships the second most prestigious then, or is it kind of muddy after the Olympics?
No, I think it would be the Olympics and then the Worlds and then the European would be the most prestigious, but the most challenging, the most difficult, the absolute top of the sport would be badminton and Burley would be on superseding the standard that we see at the Olympics. So we have a difference between the most prestigious and the most challenging. And I would say badminton in itself is the top of the sport. It's very, very difficult. But the Olympics is all about more flags, getting more competitors from around the world to compete. So it wouldn't be quite as challenging as those 2 5-stars that I mentioned.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we have a member of the audience. She's asking, when you say working as a team or coming together, what does that mean more specifically for eventing? Is it walking courses together, discussing, or what do you mean by that?
Well, it's really difficult. I worked with the Canadian team for a number of years, and in our sport, we just don't compete as a harmonious team very often. We're always competing against each other for prize money, for wins, for our business, for our personal goals, and we really don't know how to behave, I think, together to get rid of that competitiveness. That's the big thing. We have to then compete as one team, not for individuals. And I think that's been a struggle for us, not having had that opportunity for team competitions very often. So that's what I was indicating.
Yeah, it's a huge shift from people's normal approach to their competitions. All right, questions keep rolling in, so we're going to keep relaying them to you. The next one is, do you think the grass show jumping will favor the English due to jumping on grass more consistently there?
Oh gosh, the English are going to be hard to beat any on grass, on sand, on anything. I That's actually a really good question. Um, I think horses jump off really great quality surfaces, whether it's grass or European footing. So, having seen the horses jump there in the spring, they just pinged off this ground like they would in some of the top sand footings that we see. So, I don't think it's going to favor any one of the countries, but I do think it's going to favor the horses. I think they're going to enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm certainly excited to watch it. I always think watching show jumping on grass is just, it feels like a different sport. It's so beautiful. Well, there are a lot of questions coming in. So we'll answer this one and then we'll move over to the dressage test and kind of reviewing that. So this next one is, can you provide any insights into team selections? I'm sure it's a mix of rider consistency, but must also acknowledge horse strengths and weaknesses, etc.
That's such a touchy subject. I think, first of all, riders have to be qualifying the year before the standard that is expected of them at the World Championships. So I'm not in favor of people qualifying or upgrading to the 5-star level the year of the championships. I think it's all about having a really good, confident partnership with your horse that's a year or 2 years old, not 6 months. So that might be my first thing. The second thing would be they have to be showing form. They have to be showing form right up to the competition, right up until they get on the plane. So we can't have horses that have had a great competition record the year before, but they're not in top form in the months leading up to selection. But the only thing that I would add to that conversation is I did see a difference in the horses at the test event. They looked different from our North American horses. They were fresh, their ears were forward, they couldn't wait to get out in the cross country. And at the finish, they still look the same. I think ours don't necessarily go to the competition as fresh as they could be mentally. And I think this is an important part of selection of the high performance committees to really look at those final 8 weeks of preparation before putting the horses on the plane.
That makes a ton of sense. And you really want your horse to be peaking on the day and like feeling its absolute best. I think that's a huge component. So this might be a dumb question, so bear with me. Is the scoring at championships going to be the same as it was at the Olympics with the way that they're going to handle the team score, or how is that going to work? Because isn't it actually 5 people on each team this time?
Yes, it is different from the Olympics. At the Olympics, 3 scores counted. At the World Championships, we're back to the old format where 5 riders can compete at the competition, 4 on the team and 1 in the individual. Yeah, it is quite a bit different from the Olympics, and it's a format that I think people prefer. It doesn't put quite so much pressure when you've got 4 members and 3 scores to count. 3 scores to count, and you've only got 3. Just put a little extra pressure on how you're going to create your team strategy, especially in the cross country.
Definitely. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, we have some questions that we will ultimately relay, but I do want to ask about the ground jury. And first, will you just tell us the responsibilities of the ground jury members?
Yeah, first of all, the grand jury is there to make sure the competition is run under the rules of the FEI, and uh, the chef de keep, sorry, the technical delegate is our rules person. He's our go-to person, and it's really his role to control the rules and to make sure that if we need help with rules, which there's a lot of them, believe me, they're a huge asset. But the grand jury we have to wear many hats on the grand jury. We have to do the horse inspection on day one, so we have to do some work with the veterinarians who are on the jury to evaluate the horse's soundness before the competition begins. Actually, going back one day before that, on the Tuesday at Pratoni, we walked the course, and course designers really are the experts. They know what we're doing, but sometimes it's nice to have fresh eyes the week of the competition, particularly when it comes to suitability of fences for the competition that's being held, that the obstacles aren't too over challenging, or that they're up to the standard. We don't actually have a lot to say because the course designers, as I said, are top quality. But every now and then I've been to competitions where I think one or two of the jumps is over the top, and the course designer's been looking at them, every day for the last 4 months. And so we're new eyes. Then, of course, we have to judge the dressage and officiate on the day of cross country, observe dangerous riding in the interest of the welfare of the horse, have a keen eye on horses that are getting tired towards the end of the course. All horses are going to get tired, but we have to evaluate between a horse that's tired and a horse that's exhausted. Of course, we have to arbitrate over any protests that might occur during the day. And this is one thing I learned judging in Europe, is that when you come to Nations Cup, it is serious business over there. I go to most of the FEI competitions in this country, and everyone's having a great time, but this team business is serious stuff, and we've got to be on the ball with adjudicating protests, with making sure rules are abided by. The final day, we have another horse inspection, so we're evaluating soundness, and then walking the show jumping track, judging the show jumping course. So our job doesn't ever end until the champagne is opened at the very end.
It is such a big job. Like, I am shocked that more than one person in the world exists that is capable of all those different things. So how does it actually work with three of you? Is it a democracy? Like, is it 2 against 1? How do decisions get made?
Through discussions, and we always try to come up with the same result. And I think the FEI's really selects the grand juries with a lot of thought. They look at people who have a good track record. They, I think, look at officials who are rider friendly, who have good communication skills so they can talk within each other and hash out some of these issues and problems that arise. So yeah, it's actually a part of the sport I love. Having come from a background of mostly being a competitor and a trainer, then to do lots of coaching of teams. And to be honest, when I first started in to get my license as a small R 11 years ago, in the back of my mind, I didn't tell everyone, but I wanted to, having ridden at the Olympics, I wanted to judge at the Olympics. So the World Championships is just as good, and it's a thrill for me to have achieved that, and I feel very privileged.
It's a vicarious thrill for us. Like, from the day that you got appointed, have really been on cloud 9 about this. So we're very happy for you. And there's still time for the Olympics too. We can do both. All right. So we could transition into dressage tests. Unless Kinsey, do you have more questions about I guess one question that I had out of curiosity about the ground jury is you mentioned the other two people that are on the ground jury with you. Are they from, I'm guessing they're from outside of the US?
Yes, Christian is from Austria and Kiki's from Sweden.
Okay. And is that, I mean, it's just typical of a ground jury that all three would have to be from different locations?
Yeah, I think it's a great mix of judges from different parts of the world. So
Kinsey and I are here to ask the most basic questions for anyone who has them.
they're great questions.
Well, should we go through the dressage test now? And I'm sure, because there's a lot of questions, I'm sure there'll be more, and then we can go back to questions, and then maybe if we have time at the end, review Buck's test. But if we don't get time for that, I think that's totally fine.
Okay. So the first thing I would start with is what I commented on the dressage reviews that we did for Ride IQ, that your warm-up, no matter what level of competition, whether it's 5-star, Pratoni, or beginner novice, the warm-up for me is categorized into 3 areas. 1, relax your horse. 2, get him supple, which is the ability to bend. And number 3, get him in front of the 8, so going forward from the leg and coming back from the half halt. And then after that, if there's any movements that you feel you're a little bit rusty with and you would just like to remind your horse before you go into the ring, you could do a couple of those. But I see way too much drilling of the horse in the warm-up. You've already done your education at home over the final week, months, and years leading up to this moment. So you're not going to, train him teach him anything else on that final warm-up. So I think, always remember to break it down to those 3 areas, because that's what the judge wants to see: a supple horse, a relaxed horse. I think the last 10 minutes is an area where riders need to really think about how best to prepare their horse from leaving the warm-up area to going to the competition arena, as far as this mental demeanor goes. All horses need to be relaxed. The horses that are tense maybe want to just ease off in the final 10 minutes, maybe stand still, maybe walk, maybe do some stretching long and low. But I see far too many horses that come into the arena in a complete lather, absolutely on a tight rein, being restricted. So it's just an indication of that final warm-up. Really, they didn't really understand. They're getting ready for their performance on the stage. And I think people need to think about that more rather than overtraining their horse, overtraining. Then comes the question of what are we going to do going around the ring? As I said on the Ride IQ dressage reviews, show the judge something you can do, not what you can't do. In other words, if your horse has a 4-beat canter, maybe choose to trot going around the ring. It is interesting to see in the last year some of the things I've experienced at high-level competitions, what riders do going around the ring. And although many times I've got my head down doing the final comments for the previous rider, and we're not supposed to prejudge as they go around the ring and form ideas of what we're going to give for that entrance. We're all done with our previous test. You can't help but look up and watch what the rider's doing. And it's quite interesting. Just last weekend at Great Meadows, Lauren Kiefer on both of her horses did her canter work around the ring. And then she did a circle up at A and just gave the reins for 3 or 4 strides and let the horse stretch down and forward and relax his back. I thought, wow, I've never seen that. What a great thing to do. I'm always looking for riders that really understand horsemanship and what it is they're trying to achieve when they canter down the center line. In the last couple of years, Boyd Martin has improved the quality of Tetzer Lake's canter. Amazing. But it was a little bit 4-beat before, and he would trot around the ring, because that's a very attractive gait on Thomas. And then he would pick up the canter at the end of the arena when the whistle had gone, and he would do a 12-meter training pirouette in canter, because in the training pirouette, Thomas is a very good 3-beat canter. That 4-beat canter didn't come through. It got him a little bit more uphill. So the judge is looking at that canter as he's preparing to come down the center line and already getting an idea of the quality of that canter. So again, a very clever, I think, exercise to do. Ingrid Klimke at the test event in May on a fabulous mare called Sienna has such an extravagant extended trot. So guess what she did going around the ring? She did her extended trot. So it's sort of a bit of a breathtaking sight before she's even gone in the ring. So you're just ready to hit that 10 when the extended trot movement comes up. I've worked with Caroline Martin a bit with Captain Jack. He's an older gray horse and gets very, very ongoing and strong in the canter work. So up at the A end of the ring, we would do all the warm-up in trot and a bit of walking, and then do a turn on the forehand right up by the letter A, and then from the turn on the forehand, go straight into canter right down the center line. And that would just be little enough canter that he would keep the self-carriage and keep mentally fairly relaxed. Years ago, David O'Connor at Bromont, where the competition arena can be fairly electric, his horse got tight in the back, and you've got to do something going around the ring to get them loose. He went rising taut, stretched it in a low frame. Whatever it takes to get the horse ready to perform to his maximum when you enter the ring is what riders need to do going around the ring.
That is such great advice. Kinsey, Kinsey was going to say something, but it's really fascinating hearing those stories and hearing those stories of top riders preparing their horses in such thoughtful ways, because I think as amateurs, it's really easy to go around the ring and just be a ball of nerves, trotting, not thinking about that time, thinking about the time when you're in the ring and not putting enough attention to how to prepare yourself to be in the ring and how to prepare your horse to be in the ring.
Yeah. The other thing I would say is for our amateur riders, it's really unnerving for a person that's already feeling rather anxious to enter the ring, and they go by my judge's box and I tell them that they're late. My whistle has already been blown. And then, you know, a person that was already feeling a little bit nervous is now in a complete set of catastrophes just hit. So give yourself lots of time to get around the arena. Get in there early. Judges don't mind you getting in there early, so don't be late. It puts extra pressure on you and your horse can feel that.
Yeah, that sounds like the worst feeling. You're already just like so stressed, and it's like, well, now I'm late. So how do you as a coach, as a judge, feel when you see a horse and rider coming around the arena and the horse is just like blowing up because they're not comfortable with the surroundings? Like some of these events, I mean, and my only one in my head is like Land Rover, when you go down that tunnel and you get into that arena, it's a lot for these horses to experience. As a judge, what are your, like, how do you think about that? Like, are you just like, okay, well, we'll see how this goes? Or is there any, like, I'm sure you can't have like empathy that comes through the marks. I don't know. How do you think about that?
Well, the only thing I would say is if I'm sitting at sea and I'm not at sea, Kiki's the president of the ground jury at sea, but if I'm at sea, without giving the person an unfair advantage, I would give that person the maximum time. Sometimes when we're running a little bit ahead and the person's gone around the ring 1.5 times, you know, they need to get in. But that person that's struggling and having difficulty, I may try to give them a little extra time. I certainly will be gentle with, if I have a whistle or a bell, I'll make sure that I make that tone when they're at the far end, and I won't do it super loud. You know, just try to help out a little way if I can, but there's not much I can do.
It's so hard to see that happen. There's a horse at Land Rover this year that we love that is scared of the Jumbotron, and she's such a special horse, and then you see her get in there and just be terrified, and you hate to see it, but she's also young enough that she'll get used to the Jumbotron and have her day where she does her best in that scenario.
That Jumbotron reminds me of something I think is important. ring familiarization.
Mm.
The point of ring familiarization for me is to get the horse comfortable and relaxed with the surroundings of the competition environment. And I see people going in there and practicing all the things that are difficult. So the horse, as he leaves that competition arena, is feeling a little bit anxious. For me, a person that does a really good ring familiarization will just walk and trot long and low on a loose rein, go in and out of the ring if you're allowed to go into the ring. Don't put pressure on them in front of that jumbotron. Stand there, give them sugar, instead of working in front of the jumbotron and doing difficult things like flying changes or rein back if the rein back is difficult. So I think riders need to be smart about what they're trying to achieve with ring familiarization. It's not a chance for you to overtrain your horse. It's a chance for your horse to get him mentally prepared to be relaxed the next day that you compete.
I feel like Peter is the person that our horses sent to us to be like, please listen to this person. Horses definitely wish that more people had your advice. Kinsey, shall we jump into the dressage test itself? I really hope we get to the buck video because I want to hear Peter's comments on it.
Well, yeah, Peter, if it works for you, I can share my screen and we can go through this if that's a good next step.
Let's share the screen so the viewers can follow along. Basically, what I'm going to do is I'll run through this fairly quickly. I'm just going to tell the riders, and hopefully we've got some riders that are competing in Pratoni listening in tonight. If they were smart, they'd be here. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what I'd be looking for. Okay, so enter a collected canter. You've got 45 seconds after the tone goes. Ingrid Klimke was in the pure dressage at Aachen, as well as the eventing dressage, and she was late entering, so she got a -2, and then she tracked left instead of right, so she got a -4. So that was a really unfortunate way to start her test. But anyway, get there within 45 seconds. After 90 seconds, you're eliminated. So clearly the straightness is an important thing for the horse. That if the horse, I think very often, if a horse is going to be crooked or not straight in the canter, just say the haunches are to the left, it actually happens on the canter where the horse is more balanced. If you can, it's hard to get your head around that. So in other words, sometimes it's better if your horse is more balanced in the left lead canter, but he's crooked, you'd be better off coming in on the right lead canter where the balance isn't so good, but the straightness is like 100%. So things like that you've got to think about. The halt, make sure you have 3 seconds of immobility. That's really important. And then we're judging how prompt they are going into the trot after that halt. We want the halt to be without trot steps, directly to the halt, but smooth. It's very hard to get directly to the halt and not be abrupt, which looks like, a reining horse coming to a sliding stop. We don't want to see that. So that's a hard balance to get that. Anyway, prompt after the immobility for 3 seconds, promptly into the trot, and then track to the right. And like I said on the dressage test reviews, make that like a half 10-meter circle to the right, make it smooth, showing the suppleness for the judge, which is the first time she or he may see the horse from the side. MXK, the long diagonal, we have a medium trot. So I would say the important things are the regularity. That means the 1-2, the tempo and the cadence of the trot to begin with, but in addition, showing power and some ground cover in the medium trot. In the directives, which we see in the middle, which some riders think are there so the judge knows how to judge the test, but it's for the riders to know what the judge is looking for. So lengthening of the frame is something that honestly I don't see enough. But if it's in the directives, that means that FEI judges all around the world are looking for lengthening of a frame. So let's just show the judges what you're supposed to be showing, not what you think you should be doing, but maybe what the FEI has decided that judges should be judging. Half pass to the left. I think the important thing about this is not to start with the haunches leading. So I would recommend to the riders that as they leave F, that they do 2 seconds with a straight horse going towards X, and then after 2 steps, think of it as haunches in on the diagonal line. 2 steps of trot is a second. It's no time at all, but it guarantees that the forehand will be a little bit leading and in the correct position. The other thing about the half pass, very often we see the energy fading as they get to the end of their half pass. Train in the half passes so that you actually build some length and trot in the half pass so that we see that strong energy and fluency right to the letter X. The other thing to know is you can't see the letter X as you leave F, so you have to know what you're pointing at. And it's at the letter S. You should have the letter S, like Stephen, situated in between the horse's 2 ears for every step of that half pass. And if you do that, you'll end up at X. So the degree of difficulty of this 5-star test for me is all about the changes of the bend. In the 4-star test, we do circles to the left, shoulder in to the left, half pass to the left. But here, as you notice, we're continually switching it up. So we go from a half pass left to X to an 8-meter circle to the right. So it doesn't feel like a very fluid thing to do. So you have to basically, with that movement, be able to show the change of bend over 3 or 4 steps from the left for the half pass to the bend right for the circle. So to give yourself chance for those 3 steps, I would recommend getting to X a little bit early so you can make a very smooth change of bend from the left to the right. The 8-meter circle, I would say that those are hard. I think 10-meter circles are hard to make sure the tempo is even, that we don't have slowing down steps, that we don't have getting bigger steps. And just try to get the trot as energized as you can, and that depends on your horse's strength because 8 meters are fairly advanced. So from the 8-meter circle to the right, we go directly into shoulder in right. So we're using the right bend we had on the right circle. So you should be able to flow straight into that shoulder in right, which again, the degree of difficulty having the shoulder in on the center line versus the track becomes more difficult because we don't have a fence to help balance and to hold the position. So we've got shoulder in right, and then it's C-track left. So again, over 3 or 4 steps, we've got to show the bend from the right to the left. So again, I recommend getting to G 2 or 3 steps early, so you've got time to make a very slow, progressive, and smooth change of bend through the horse's body and neck. So here we have C-track left, and again, you'll see in the directives that says bend in the shoulder in, and actually bend in the track left as well. Extended trot, so we want to see more ground cover than we had for the medium trot, more power, but again, lengthening of the frame. I see far too many of our riders just with too much of a held look, that the reins are tight and the reins have too much pressure in them, and that balance in the extended trot is being maintained through too much restriction. We're judging the freedom of the gaits in every movement. So freedom of the gaits means a soft contact. Transitions are very important. We have a transition mark for the extended, which is actually a transition preparing for the extended trot, and actually then going from the extended back to the collected trot. I would have to say collected trot is enhanced engagement and uphill balance and lightness of the forehand. So again, if I see a horse in that collected transition at the end of the extended, those steps being micromanaged and too strong, that's not lightness of the forehand. We want to see a light contact. Okay, so then we half pass to the right. Again, prepare with the suppleness in the corner of the arena. And then we have that change of, okay, so K to X, we should have the letter R between the horse's ears. If that'll end up, the horse at X, again, get there 2 or 3 steps ahead of time. So we have enough time for those very fluid and patient looking changes of bend. So judges want to see suppleness on each rein, the ability to bend and to be flexible with their body, but also the change of bend from one to the other has got to be done in a very soft and kind of fluid way. So circle left and then shoulder in left again. The circle sets us up for that. Left bend for the shoulder in left. And then we have a walk at C and track right. I would just have to say that I'm a bend fanatic, and I'm constantly saying more bend, more bend, more bend in all these movements. If you count the bend in the track right at C for box 1, box meaning the movement, and again, box 11, the track right in walk again. If you consider the bend that's required in those two movements, the word bend appears a total of 8 times out of 11 movements. So riders need to they should be figuring this out, that the judges want to see bend. I wonder sometimes if riders are so obsessed with the outside rein, the dominance of the outside rein, which we're all taught inside rein to outside leg. It is a more dominant, more supporting rein, but it's not so strong that it's restricting the bend or the flexion. And I think sometimes that happens. Or they think that the amount of bend they have is enough, and it's just certainly not. So I would have to highlight all those word bends as they appear in the directives. Interesting movement here when we track to the right at box 11. So we've done shoulder and left, and again, finish early so we can make number 1, change the bend at G, and then track to the right as if you're on a half circle. And then on the turn in front of C is the best place to make that transition, not at G when you're on the center line. Why? Because horses are more submissive, they're softer, they're more responsive to the half halts, which would be used for the trot walk. They're more submissive in a moment when they're bending in their body. So that would be in that turn to the right. But notice that is a movement out of 10 for the medium walk. Medium walk is an uphill balance. It's an uphill frame in the pole. And there is a tendency with the German riders to immediately go in the extended walk frame. But the medium walk and the extended walk are two different outlines of the neck and the pole. So medium walk is an uphill balance. Extended walk is where the pole is at the same level of the wither or slightly lower. The nose goes forward ahead of the vertical, which will make the top of the neck flat like a table. And so this is very much different than the medium walk. So for those people that go more into the free walk frame, as soon as they make that walk transition, 6 is the most you're going to get from me. I think there is a strategy there with some horses that tend to get tense in the extended walk. They find it's better to get a low mark for the medium walk in that turn, because when you lower the pole, you relax their back. So maybe they think that might be leading to agree to a lower mark for the medium, but they might save them from jigging and jogging in the extended walk, which would go down to a 4 or a 3. Okay, so the extended walk, I discussed the frame, but what we're really looking is for the horse that's marching. It's going with mission, but without being quick. And most important is that word that we see in the directives, overtrack. The horse has to have at least 1 hoof print overtrack to get a 7, 2, or 3 for an 8 or 9, providing that they're seeking the contact going forward with the frame in front of the vertical. Riders need to keep a light feel of the contact and not a loose rein. And if you can get all those things, then you're going to get a really good walk mark. It's unfortunately very rare that we see event horses with a really good overtrack. So if you have one that has a good overtrack, really work on bringing the best out in that extended walk and medium walk transition. One comment about the extended walk. Do you know when we see the very best extended walks, Jessa? Do you know where we see those? When the horse is
After the test, I bet.
after the test is over. You're exactly right. Halt, salute, the horses turn around, leave the ring, and they are marching, they are over tracking, the head is forward, the neck is down, the ears are forward, they're relaxed. So sometimes when I'm teaching, I'll say, okay, when you get to that extended walk, give your horse a little tiny pat and say, the test is over, well done. And just see if you can make him, feel that the test is over, because those extended walks when they leave the ring every time are just wonderful. Okay, so medium walk, what I'm really not wanting to see at the end of the extended walk is this micromanaging of the walk, the shortening of the neck, the taking pressure on the horse's mouth, and the rider wonders why the rhythm starts to change and the horse gets tight in his body. We don't have tracking up, which we need to see in medium walk. And sometimes we can actually see a change in the rhythm and maybe a jog step. So what I tell people to do is keep the same extended walk, keep the same march. Don't change the balance at all, just change the pole and the frame and bring them more uphill in a very light way that they hardly realize that you're making a transition. And yeah, don't overbalance. It leads, that restriction of the gait goes directly to anxiety in the horse's body. Understand also the biomechanics of how a horse walks. If you look at a horse walking in the paddock, his nose is going forward and back and forward and back. This is the biomechanics of the way he walks, and also the same thing happens in canter. It's different in trot. The head and neck stay fairly still. So we have to have a rider with a soft following hand, loosen the elbows, that is going to encourage the horse to accept the contact in a confident way, not that it's feeling that restriction. Okay, so now for the fun stuff. The halt, try and get the shoulders of the horse right at the letter A. Make the transition so that we have him square and uphill and not curling, but uphill and standing like a statue with a nice open throat latch angle, the nose being a little bit ahead of the vertical. And to riders, take your time to get the immobility, at least 3 seconds. In the warm-up and at home, always practice 6. So the 3 is something that they're not used to, because that's a great way to lose marks for a very simple movement, the halts, but you lose marks if you don't halt for long enough. The rein back to the canter is 1 mark. So we kind of give, I kind of do an average of the 2 scores. The rein back 5 steps, what we're looking for is, again, it's an uphill movement, not to allow the pole low like the extended walk, which we see very often. It's an uphill movement. The horses need to go back on a light contact. They need to be willing and soft in their mouth. And to get bonus points above a 7, they have to come back in diagonal pairs, where the right front moves backwards with the left hind, and vice versa, the left front and the right hind. So diagonal pairs enables you to get an 8 or a 9. If you don't have those diagonal pairs, it's impossible to get more than a 7. The canter, honestly, for me personally, if they make a step of walk or 2 and it's a very fluid transition from rein back to canter, I don't mind that. I don't expect them to go from a rein back step to a canter stride and expect the back not to get a little bit tight. So I'm okay with one or 2 walk steps, and then directly and promptly and crisply into the right lead canter, not with a hesitation, and right away into an uphill balance. So quite a hard movement to get a good score. Medium canter, be ready to be showing medium at the very first canter. To S, again, the length of the frame and the stride, exactly the conversation we had in the trot. And then collected canter, which is a more uphill frame than the medium. Riders tend to do everything rather restricted and everything at the same uphill balance. But for me, if you show a little bit of a difference, the collected canter is slightly more uphill, where we can enhance the engagement and try to create some sort of self-carriage and light contact. That change in the pole helps to show the difference in the two different types of canter. So S to R, a half circle to the right. We have a flying change coming up, and I think riders need to ride this SR half circle not in neutral, thinking, oh my gosh, I've got to get my horses relaxed, that flying change is coming up, but to prepare for the balance of that flying change coming up. In other words, use that half circle as an opportunity to really work on the jump of the canter, the impulsion of the canter, the extra balance of that canter. And then, if anything, you ease off going into the flying change across the center line, R to V diagonal, as opposed to being in neutral and trying to get the horse relaxed, and very often they become unfocused. And then you start micromanaging as you're approaching the center line to do that flying change, and horses get tight in their body and start to speed up the canter. So do it in reverse. Really work on a higher quality collected canter in the half circle and not riding that diagonal line quite as hard. So the 4-star test, we had an opportunity to show the flying change one horse's length before or after X, but here the degree of difficulty is higher, and the expectation is that they do it right as they're crossing the center line. Flying changes can be different scores for the late behind 5 or 5-5 if they're together, which means that both legs don't have a separation. The coordination of the legs isn't what it should do. 5-5 for a horse that isn't engaged or through, or sometimes we say slow behind. 6 for the flying change, that is correct, which means the coordination of the legs was clean, but perhaps it's flat and a little bit low in the pole. Or a canter, a flying change that's quite correct, but the canter is 4-beat. So those flying changes would get 6. 7 and up, we're really seeing an expressive flying change and judging the quality of the canter before and after the change as well. The more we can show that moment of suspension in the collected canter before and after the change and during the flying change, then the higher the mark. So half pass left to the quarter line. I think the bend in the corner between A and F is important to get that forehand leading. So in trot half passes, we let the horse come out of the turn absolutely straight and then develop haunches in on the center line. And half pass and canter, if you went straight into 2 canter strides, you'd be already at the quarter line. So it's way too late to develop the position. So I find the bending in the corner is very helpful between A and F. So we set up this half pass to the 3/4 line, which they call the quarter line. We have to then go straight ahead on the flying change and show a flying change. So if you are going between, so if you can get to the quarter line a little bit sooner rather than later, do your flying change on the quarter line a little sooner rather than later, they won't, that short wall won't have the effect of running them into a brick wall and encouraging them maybe to be late behind. So don't do your flying change too close to the end, because the horses might get unfocused, might feel that restriction of that short side when they get to the end of the arena, and it might just make them be late behind. Again, same conversation about the quality of the canter, the different scores that we're going to give for the flying change. Extended canter now from F to M. Okay, this is an important movement to execute in a way that you can maximize the marks for both box 22 and box 23. So let's look at what do we have to do at 23. We have to do a stretch circle in working canter. And remember that a horse's ability to stretch down and forward is really a reflection of how balanced they are. If they're on the forehand and the stride is elongated, they're not going to show the quality of the canter, but also they can't physically stretch as much. So we have 3 strides between M and C to get the horses collected, ready for that stretch circle. 3 strides is nothing coming from extended canter. So what I like people to do is to get into the extended canter early at M, F, very promptly at F, go forward into F, even start in the corner between A and F, start your extended so you can get a really great number of strides, a good demonstration of the extended canter, the ground cover to show the judge, but then come back maybe 3 horses lengths before M. Let the transition back to M be a little bit on the early side so you have time to show that self-balance in the collected canter before you get to C, and then maybe get a better stretch circle. Again, usually I'm saying show more stretch. If in the directives you see it says stretching forward and downward, I always see lots of forward, but not enough downward. Okay, so you've got to train your horse at home, not only forward, but also downward. They should be going down towards their knees, not just low by their chest. Remember, also part of the score is that they're seeking the contact, again, just like we talked about in a trot stretch or a walk stretch. The nose should be a little bit ahead of the vertical. It should show some element of submission. It should show a light feel with the rider's hands, but it should be forward and down. And then as we pick up the pole, as we're approaching C, to do that without resistance and to do that with a confident connection with the rider's hands. Then we've got a very few number of strides to get ready to collect that canter or balance the canter before that final short diagonal S to P, where we have to do another flying change. I do see a tendency as we progress with the canter work that the quality of the canter, meaning the 3-beat rhythm, the uphill balance, the uphill tendency, and the self-carriage starts to diminish as we get towards the final third of the test. So I would encourage riders to think about their mental game, to stay focused, to show that same degree of balance as they had for the first canter movements and show it in the final canter movements. Down the center line, it's always disappointing for me when riders go deep in the corner at F and show a center line which is more like a 90-degree turn and a 90-degree turn. Again, make it like a half circle to the right. Show the suppleness in the turn. Make that turn onto the center line easy for the horse, not making it difficult by actually slowing down to go deep into the corner. In which case, if we did that, we might have a change in the tempo. We might lose the roundness of the frame. It might get a little bit hollow. So all these things that riders do on that final turn on the center line, which isn't helping their score. The halted L is at the second letter. It comes up very quickly. So if we make that turn onto the center line a little bit easier by making it like a half circle, really working on the balance on that turn onto the center line in preparation for that halt, because it comes very quickly. Then we have the harmony mark, and as I discussed in the dressage test reviews, it's a little bit of a freedom of the judge to, express their own personal feelings about riding, about training, the pathway of training. Really, for me, it's the connection. It's about that soft, confident feel with the horse's mouth. I often wonder if this is a rider that I would put on my horse when I'm looking at that harmony mark. I want to have a rider on my horse that is light and encourage confidence with the horse, not a rider that sits in a way that's tight and is not encouraging tight and tense, and in the way they sit the trot is not encouraging the horse's back to stay relaxed. But for me, it's about the lightness of the hand, the response to the aids, forward and back with invisible aids. As I've said before, my favorite comment is happy horse equals happy judge. If I've seen a horse that's happy, his ears are forward, he's doing all the movements with freedom at the gates and suppleness and looseness of his body, I'm going to go really high on that harmony mark. I go really high on that harmony mark if it's a nice ride. Even if there was a couple of mistakes or the rider struggled with the horse that was a bit tense, if it's a harsh rider with abusive hands, I'm going to go really low on that mark. So be prepared.
Peter, that was amazing. I every time I listen to one of your dressage test reviews, playbooks, I am always like, this is just the best resource in the whole world. And I know, at least for me, I am so excited to have all that color in my head when I watch the live stream. I'm gonna be like, okay, this is what Peter is thinking about. And we can't thank you enough for like giving us your time and going through that. And we are so honored that you're sharing your knowledge with us.
Thank you, Kenzie. It's a pleasure.
It sparks joy. Like, I feel like I just watched the most beautiful dressage test ever, like that feeling, but we didn't even watch a test. I just got, like, I am so fascinated and I love dressage so much more after we learn from you. I guess because you're kind of pulling back the curtain on a lot of it. So yeah, I'm also fascinated and grateful.
Thank you.
So we are way over our hour.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
No, I'm saying for your sake. Like, we hate to keep people longer than we intended to. Trust me, I could stay with you forever and learn about this stuff and just chat with you, because my heart always feels very full when we get to interact with you. So
that's a good way. Thank you.
So I guess, Peter, this is kind of our send-off with you. Good luck out there. We, like Krista said, are so proud to know you and to have you over there, have you such a big part of this massive event. And thank you for preparing us to be educated and inspired viewers, because really what you just did is going to make, the whole event, but especially the dressage day, so much more fulfilling as a viewer. I'm going to be a real armchair expert over here enjoying the dressage day.
Well, it is a privilege that I was invited. I'm forever grateful that I got this chance. But I'm also proud, not only for Canada, but for North America, that we have a representative over there. So it should be a great week. I wish our Canadian and American teams the best of luck, and I'll try not to be too harsh on you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Peter. We hope you have the best travel to get over there and the best time while you're there, and we can't wait to hear all about it once you get back.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thanks, Peter.
Bye,
have
Peter.
a great
Thank
evening.
You. Bye, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that episode of Office Hours. Before you go, I'd love to tell you a little more about Ride IQ. With Ride IQ, you can get guidance from an incredible coach anytime you want. No need to deal with hauling or scheduling or budgeting. Our members always describe it best, and one of our members, Lauren, recently said, Ride IQ has absolutely reinvigorated me to pursue excellence with every ride. The lessons provide much needed direction, purposeful exercises and reminders to keep me in check, while also asking my horse to perform. Lauren rocks, as do all Ride IQ members. I'll quickly explain more about how Ride IQ works. First, you look through the app and choose a lesson based on your horse or a skill you're working on. There are lessons specifically for restarting OTTBs, lessons for nervous horses or horses that are behind the leg, as well as lessons that teach every stage of skills like shoulder in or lengthenings. Then you tack up and press play, and you have a top coach like Doug Payne or Kyle Carter or Lawrence Brycer in your ear guiding you every step of the ride. If you'd like to learn more, visit ride-iq.com or start your 2-week free trial by downloading the Ride IQ app on your iPhone or Android. Thanks for listening and have a wonderful rest of your day.